At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Sean McNulty of the Wake Up Newsletter here at the Ankler here on the Jersey Shore on Thursday, August 29th. I'm joined by Elaine Lowe and a Richard Rushfield, who has that unmistakable look of joy on his face to be back at work, which I think is kind of the same face Richard probably had on vacation. Richard, are you happy to see us?
I'm delighted to be back here. I survived the heat wave in Rome and Swifty invasion in England.
Okay,
and back to tell the tale.
I'm glad you're here to put fears to rest, Richard, that something had happened to you, which David last week was like, and everything's fine. Richard's okay.
Yeah, David was starting some rumors. He was starting some rumors there. They were not going in a good direction. I'll just say that. So Richard, Elaine and I can both attest. We see him as we're speaking. This is not AI Richard being substituted here. This is the...
Hold up a newspaper with today's date, Richard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Richard, what'd you bring us back from Europe? Did you buy us a movie studio? What'd you get?
They give away TV series there.
Deals wow. Breaking news here.
So you can all do it. And I was invited to play at Wimbledon, so I'm sure.
Wimbledon was like 3 months ago, Richard.
That's why they invited him. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I was.
You can come now. All right, great. Okay. Yeah. Did you run into any Kazakhstani telecom moguls while you were over there wearing Paramount Rules T-shirts or anything? Any of Edgar Bronfman's contingent in Europe that maybe you saw in the streets of Rome or something?
I tell you, you walk through the streets of Europe and everybody's just saying, "What's happening with Paramount? Is it really going to? Is David Ellison really gonna take over?" Like that. It's all anyone can talk about there.
You can't escape
every waiter and cab driver just wants to know, like, is the deal going to go through?
It is not. We'll start here by pouring out some Seagram's VO for the Edgar Bronfman's historic run at taking control of Paramount Global, which came to an abrupt end with a simple letter from Edgar earlier this week saying, "It's been real, y'all, but peace out." So now it's back to the day-to-day business of cost savings and asset sales, Richard, until Skydance gets the keys sometime in July 2025, assuming the U.S. government is okay with all this. But Richard, where does this whole shebang rank for you in Hollywood deal history? How's this going to be remembered, do you think, here in the annals of Hollywood, now that it seems to have settled out here? I say, finally, famous last words, but all the deadlines are over, so I feel okay saying it. But Richard, where's this going to land here, you think, maybe 5-10 years down the road?
I mean, I think we just had a pricing to market experience on sort of the entire Hollywood legacy. That Paramount, one of the great studios with one of the great libraries, including what's considered, one of the top 2 American movies ever made, The Godfather, and many others besides that, was put on the block. And everything else. And when you do that, it turns out if you've got a billionaire's scion who wants to play in the movie business, then you might be worth something. And short of that, it seems the value of all that stuff is somewhere in the neighborhood of zero.
Yeah, Wall Street definitely didn't come biting here. They're not no longer too interested in investing in the future of the media business, where stocks are where they are anyway. So
if you were one of the other studios right now and you were, say, trying to adjust your valuation, how do you look at this whole experience and how does it impact what you might think you're worth?
Yeah, I mean, the only 2 comps, it's just WBD and Lionsgate to a degree once they finally split off Starz. I mean, everybody else is tucked into other businesses, so it's really not, I guess if you were, Comcast looking to sell NBC Universal at some point. That would be maybe, but I don't think that's in anybody's future, even Sony or, they're kind of ensconced there, Richard, inside of the companies, and Disney's certainly not parting with its studio business and just going to go with theme parks, So it's a big question for WBD and Lionsgate, and Lionsgate's probably going to show us more sooner than later, but who knows what's happening with WBD. But obviously Paramount and WBD both took big, massive, these write-downs on assets, Elaine, this past summer. So they both looked at they've gotten the feedback from Wall Street, and they both took the same step, and they're the two most, closest aligned studios, Elaine.
Do you feel like Warner Brothers Discovery is happy that all of this Paramount saga stuff is roiling the headlines? They're like, maybe no one will notice that our multi-billion-dollar write-down happened a couple of weeks ago.
That spotlight can now shift back to something else now, Elaine. So, Richard, I will nod. You had a very funny thing. There's a piece in, The Telegraph this week on Zaslav. And
so there was a article that ran in the Telegraph. The headline referred to David Zaslav as the party-loving mogul making a mess out of Warner Brothers.
Not great as it is, but exactly.
But apparently that was not that was the toned down version. And the original was the hated Hollywood mogul intent on destroying Warner Brothers.
Oh, way hard, Ty.
That was the original.
I'll take Party Hopper.
Title.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's
Party Hopper was the toned down version.
That was the toned down version.
The British press, ruthless.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it's going over the seas there. And speaking of Elaine, Minori had some new insight into this from the Edinburgh Festival that was going on. So what was afoot there with Paramount on the global, or the UK scale, I should say?
A curious case of the missing chief content officer over there. So Channel 5 is big in the UK, I'm told.
It's one of the five main broadcasters that Paramount owns. So yes, and
it's owned by Paramount UK, and apparently its chief content officer Ben Frow was supposed to be at the Edinburgh International TV Festival and then backed out at the last minute, ostensibly because he was sick. But people have been wondering just how much, all of this merger stuff has been disrupting international operations over there. So Minori has a really good breakdown of that, and also just the value of international operations to Paramount as a whole. It's like we talked about last week, and pretty much anytime we talk about Paramount and this long national nightmare, which seems to be coming to an end right now, right? It's like, who winds up suffering but the people who work at Paramount and the people who work with Paramount in trying to figure out, where does business stand if we're constantly in this merger disruption?
Yeah, and certainly the cuts, the layoffs that are going on now were all domestic, but certainly a lot of just uncertainty there. A lot of good quotes in her piece of just, the tenor of the mood over in the UK seemed very, very familiar, but she had a lot of good insight into what's going on or what's not going on over there as well, and the growth of US as a focus and, pulling things back. So anyway, a good read over there at theankler.com. But Richard, over at Apple TV, according to a New York Times report this week, it sounds like the Poobahs up in Cupertino are finally starting to ask the same questions about Apple TV that we've been asking on this podcast for quite some time, namely, what's the plan here?
I mean, but besides just saying, oh, that movie sounds good. How many hundreds of millions do they want?
Yeah, how many right, exactly.
One thing is everyone who takes over a studio now, David Ellison proclaimed this, David Zaslav claimed it, everyone that gets a job in Hollywood, the first thing they do is they make an announcement about this studio is going to be the home for talent.
Of course.
And this is going to be the most talent-friendly studio there is. And there's good reason for that, because if you want to have great projects, you have to have talent to create them.
And pocketbook-wise, that's been true for Apple, right? I mean, they've always been willing to shell out the big bucks for talent.
That has been true. When you pull the rug out from under Brad Pitt and George Clooney 2 or 3 days before the movie that you promised them you were going to release theatrically was supposed to start marketing, that sends a different message to talent.
Yeah.
And, maybe you have enough hundreds of millions to throw around.
Yeah, they're paid out, but yeah.
But then you have to spend hundreds of millions to pay for having just insulted the two most kind of made men of made men in all of Hollywood.
Right, who are also at the Global Film Festival this week with said movie. So, yeah, exactly, who will be asked about this question by a lot of press members. So, yeah, this obviously we've talked about it here in the podcast, Fly Me to the Moon didn't quite work on any financial metric. Argyle, which had a pretty similar results. Wolves was just recently pulled. That was previously a late September theatrical release. Will now be pretty much only Apple TV only. The new strategy cited in the piece in the Times there was essentially 2 tentpole theatrical releases a year. Richard presumably partnered with a movie studio to do that. So basically, Brad Pitt in Wolves is streaming, but Brad Pitt in F1 is a theatrical film. That's next year. But that you wrote a little bit about this, but that's reportedly, a $300 million production, whatever. Is an F1 movie with Brad Pitt going to make $700 to $800 million that it needs to make to even just by using stodgy old business math that streaming seems to get a pass on from some people, but in the end, that's a lot of money to put on a Brad Pitt F1 movie.
Yeah, I mean, $300 million. I don't think $700 million.
I'm being vastly conservative here. I mean,
if you spend $0 marketing your $300 million movie.
Brad Pitt just does it all. That's it. That's why you hire him, Richard. Come on.
No, I mean, there's none of these movies are terrible movies.
Right.
They've all been good and honorable movies. Killers of the Flower Moon, but it's just there's a price at which things make money, and they don't. In a normal studio, you might say, okay, well, they don't have to make all their money at the box office.
Sure.
If they take a big bite out of it, then this movie will live on and have sequels and toys and
video
reboots
and other things, right? Yeah. Windows
and will be sold for stream. But here, you just don't know what that downstream is. What is the value of these movies and this library to Apple or to Amazon?
They're also learning, everybody comes in, Richard, the new player comes in, oh, you guys are doing it all wrong, or, whatever it might be, or we have a new mode forward. Apple doesn't sell Windows, so there are no other ancillary revenues on this outside of it going to Apple TV. That's it. They don't, license them out further, and there's no advertising, so it's not like you can have ad revenue to support the premiere of, F1 when it premieres on Apple TV.
And there's no consumer products.
There's no consumer products, yeah.
They don't have video games or...
Right.
Are you going to bet on their movie division existing in 5 years to make sequels or anything like that?
You think about every other studio, and Disney obviously has this enormous arm with both consumer products and theme parks. You look at a place like Netflix, which, they came in early. They've got a huge, dominance over subscription and people just making that a staple. You even look at Amazon, which in theory, I feel like has a lot of potential to incorporate its retail arm into things, but just hasn't for whatever reason. But it's what does Apple have besides getting subscribers? They're not going to sell more iPhones from making movies.
So in my piece today, I talk about the long history of companies that had really good reasons to be in Hollywood. The very brilliant Coca-Cola executives and the brilliant AT&T executives could have given you long lectures about synergy and all these things. But the bottom line is people come to Hollywood because they want to be in Hollywood, as the Paramount auction showed. If you've got money to throw around and you've got time and you're looking for your next mountain to climb, this is a lot more fun than how can we optimize our supply chain better to squeeze another 0.5 percentage point out of
selling toilet paper. Yeah, exactly.
And they all come in because they're the biggest companies in the world, and back to Coca-Cola saying, what is this money to us? What does that matter? We'll buy and sell you people 100 times over. Mm-hmm. But of course, they say that, but what they're actually thinking is, we're geniuses. So, and
we'll figure it out. Right.
You're a bunch of clowns here. So what we do is, of course, going to be much more successful. And, at some point, if you're sitting at the table and you don't know who the mark is you.
Right.
And you realize that you're throwing around your billions, and a lot of people doing very well off of it. And it's... And Apple, of course, can afford this.
Right. It's not a matter of it's not breaking the company up here, obviously, clearly,
But no one likes to look stupid.
Well, eventually, right. And that was part of it in the piece, if you pick the wrong business, if you're worried about your image being tarnished. It's that was part of the reason in this shift was listed there. Richard, was Apple's getting concerned about the bad press about films like, Fly Me to the Moon and Argyle. And it's you should not be in Hollywood if that's anywhere on your list of problems for you as a company.
The movie business has a traditional model that no one for a sustained period in 100 years has been able to improve on, which is more or less you make 20 movies, 3 or 4 of them are hits,
Right.
3 or 4 of them are flops, and the rest are in the middle. And 20 movies is what you got to make to get those 3 or 4 hits. And, there've been exceptions in time, like when people are on a great run, like
Sure.
Disney was for a while. But over time, that's generally, in what other business, but people come from other businesses. They're not like, we're going to launch 20 products to find 3 hits.
Right.
That-
Yeah. It's like we launched one. It's an iWatch, or it's like that's it. Apple Watch, I should say.
That's the thing for the decade.
We have 4
That's-
products: iPads, watches, desktop,
Yeah.
and phones.
I
And,
can do 20 things and hope that a couple of them
yeah.
catch fire.
Yeah.
And you have no idea whether anybody's going to want to see this thing that they've never heard of. And we're just going to dump hundreds of millions into it.
Yeah.
That's just not a business that makes sense to anybody else.
Well, reasonably, what is a good revenue model for a place like Apple? If you're a streamer and you don't have parks, you don't have product, you don't have a place in people's wallets already as a subscription service, you don't have ads. I don't know. What do you see, Sean, as a viable revenue stream here for a place like Apple?
Well, they're an electronic product company, and tech.
But
and
how
it's
are movies selling tech? Nobody
I
needs.
agree. I have nothing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if this whole division went away, I don't know that you'd see a
You wouldn't see a
difference
dip
Apple's
in
business.
in
I mean,
iPhone
overall. So,
sales.
that's this brand halo effect I've never bought from day one. I'm just like, oh, well, it's going to help people talking about Apple, but eventually they're going to start talking about how much of a disaster this is or how these things aren't working. They may be talking about you when Coda's nominated, and that's fantastic, but it goes both ways eventually, and you have to be comfortable with that. That conversation, I don't care what Richard said, some years are good, some years are bad, but there will be bad years and there will be time, and you better have a rationale here. And we've all been asking these questions, and now it's like they're asking these questions too, finally. And there is no answer, really. And I can't see one. Their answer is to do 2 tentpole films a year, which will supposedly check that box of getting Apple out in the public, and maybe they just don't care that they lose.
I'm just what am I not
400 million.
seeing here? What is the rationale?
I mean, this is the realization they're having there. The one thing that's also happening at Apple is the movies that are the gravy train's coming to an end. It seems like, Richard, and as they often do, whenever they come to town, the train always eventually leaves. But the films that are going to be streaming only are now going to have, reportedly, again in the New York Times here, being kept to a mere under $80 million, Richard, per film, which that's for everything.
So now that you've insulted the stars and you've told them that they're not going to have
less.
theatrical and everything, you're going to pay them less, and you're still going to get the Apple level A-list to come and sign up. Explain to me how that works.
I'm very as curious as you are to find out. I will note that $80 million is pretty much what they spent for Brad George and director John Watts alone on Wolves. So this math's going to change here. And this is what, these are the packages, CAA packages going in the door. Apple will buy them. And, these other movies, if they're not going to be the theatrical ones, Richard, under $80 million for all, including production and star salaries. Yeah, that, big $30 million check from Apple ain't gonna cut it, or you're gonna have a movie with 3 people in an office talking to each other because they're taking the whole production budget out of it. But that's austerity's tough, Richard. When this eventually comes around, and it sounds like it's coming around at Apple, when is this madness going to end? And I think it's closer than they thought.
Are they really in this business to go head to head with Neon? Is that is that what Apple came to Hollywood for? To
lose a project to A24. Yeah. But coming up next, our prestige junkie herself, Katie Rich, is going to join to talk everything and to know about the Fall Film Festival season, where I don't know that Apple has anything going on this year, but we'll find out. And talk about the Oscar race as it basically kicks off with Venice and Telluride this week, and TIFF on deck right after that, after the Labor Day break. But before we take a break here, a few things at the Ankler this week to check out. Eric Barmack took a look at the race to build AI's TikTok. A good read from Eric over there at the Ankler. And Elaine had a report on Chick-fil-A. Well, that's new, Elaine. You trying out a new coverage area? What's going on?
Yeah, the fast food streamer wars are about to begin.
You're done. You're like, that's it, guys. I'm going to the fast food wars.
Well, I think you guys will recall last week's Deadline report that Chick-fil-A is reportedly starting up a streaming service of its own, not just branded content, but a whole Chick-fil-A branded streamer in case you wanted to add that next to Netflix and Disney Plus.
Chick Plus? What do we got? Who knows? Well,
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? I want to know what the name of this thing is going to be. But yeah, I asked around and I was like, is anybody like actually taking this thing seriously? And to my surprise, everyone is.
Everyone is, okay. Forget Apple. Apple's gone with the money. Chick-fil-A has the money now. So they're the new guys in town
because
with paychecks.
Brands have money, and in some forms of the model, like the brands actually pony up for some of the programming. And B, as a streaming service, it's nice to have another buyer on the market, is what I was hearing.
Yeah.
And like, it's actually not that uncommon to have apparently a brand work together with a showrunner to create something that's not just like sponsored content, that's like something that's, you know, sort of centered on like a show. You think of like Lego Masters or something like that.
On Fox.
So there's a very big gray area now between branded entertainment and, I guess, what we think of as pure play entertainment.
Yes, purely creative choices or influenced creative choices, I guess. Yeah. Now, a lot of great quotes from the seeming enthusiasm, or certainly open arms, that's being greeted around town for that announcement.
Will you add Chick-fil-A Plus to your streaming diet?
You have to add it into your bill.
Well, so, you know, I don't know if you all read about the return of Kookaroo that's coming to L.A. here.
You're holding out for the Kookaroo streamer?
Yeah, I want to get in with Kookaroo Productions once they get that back up and running.
Listen, once In-N-Out starts its own streamer, it's over for you guys.
That's it. Geolocated to Los Angeles. Exactly. Anyway, you can check out that great read and Eric's read and much more there at theankler.com. And we'll be back in a moment with Katie Rich.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
All right, we're now joined by a woman whose podcast stylings will do nothing but up our game here at the Ankler Pod. I'm, of course, talking about the Ankler's in-house awards business expert and prestige junkie herself, Katie Rich. Katie, thanks for crossing pods here today.
I'm so happy to be here. It feels like I've been waiting for this moment ever since I joined the Ankler.
We're recording here on Thursday afternoon, so Venice is certainly in full effect. And Katie, would you rather be in Venice today or here talking with us in your podcast closet?
I've never been to Venice either. And I don't know how humid it is. It's canals. It could still be very hot outside.
Fair
Telluride
question.
is very famous for just having the all-time great weather. But, if you're going to make me choose, I guess I'll take an international trip if you're offering it.
Your eating may be better in Venice than over Telluride, but yeah, exactly. So far, some pretty positive reviews on Beetlejuice as far as I've seen. We have Angelina Jolie's Maria just debuted as well. Kate Blanchett was doing the carpet today, I think. So what's been going on or catching your eye there at Venice so far, Katie?
I think you've hit the two big highlights. Beetlejuice got not universally good reviews, but pretty good reviews, including from people who I would have thought would have been skeptical. So opening in theaters next week, I guess. So that could be a really interesting bump to see that happen and see, Tim Burton come back, Jenna Ortega tested as a movie star. So much going on with that. It feels like things are a little bit more muted on Maria, which Netflix picked up for U.S. distribution since Venice started. I mean, Angelina Jolie hasn't been in a movie in so long that there is an automatic interest factor there. But, I think Pablo Larraín's trilogy of movies about famous women, people can really love them or leave them. So I'm curious to see where the buzz lands on that. That's one of the titles that's not going to be at Toronto. I won't get to see it. So I'll have to wait my turn.
Okay, there you go. And we have Joker 2, Joker Folie à Deux. My French is always fantastic, Katie. So
that's speaking Italian anyway.
As I know, exactly. I don't know what's going on. And Guadagnino's Queer is still coming up, I think, in Venice. So still a few more films to roll out here this weekend, I believe, right?
Yeah. Lady Gaga riding on a gondola is still happening for us. I think it's premiering a little bit later. I know a lot of the critics who were going to Venice and then to Toronto were kind of annoyed that Joker basically premieres when they'll already be on their way to Toronto, but several of them got a chance to see it earlier. So we'll have reviews on that in a few days. And then, Queer is going to Toronto after Venice. You'll be able to tell quickly that keeping track of the triangulation of which film is at which of these three festivals happening more or less simultaneously gets very difficult. But I will be seeing Queer in Toronto, and I'm very interested to hear what Venice has to say about it.
All right. But no one seems to be spending their Venice sitting in a hotel room talking to journalists, Katie. A bit of bad. It's a battle between it ends with us, press junket, and this. It seems like press junkets are having a bad run here at the end of the summer, huh? Is that what's going on?
Maybe everyone learned from Blake Lively that sitting down for a press junket with an interviewer that you don't know can just turn around so badly for you, and it's not worth it. The Hollywood Reporter wrote about what sound like some very fully believed grievances from members of the international press at Venice. And I think it's very true that people from outlets all over the world will go to these film festivals and sit in on even a press conference or a roundtable interview with 15 other people and get quotes that will help them, pay for their plane tickets there and will be published all over the place. That's a lot of media we don't always see. It's kind of from where I'm sitting, I'm like, that's not really that important to the whole process. But it actually is. But I also totally understand these studios being like, we can get away with only having Brad Pitt and George Clooney walk the red carpet for Wolves and be done. We're going to do that. So the journalists have to push back if they want it to stay alive. And I'm curious if that gets them somewhere.
That all sounds like a very fancy version of TCA. Where you just grab a bunch of, except we do it in a windowless ballroom in Pasadena.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Venice press conferences are in a windowless room or not. I always see the photos of them all sitting up on the dais, and there's a little note card that says A. Jolie and the microphone where she's going to be speaking. But I feel like the secret of all film festivals is that once you're there, the glamour kind of fades away, and you're still on a shuttle bus or in a hotel lobby. Eventually, it all kind of settles down to the same level.
You're on a lot of boats in Venice, isn't that the thing to get around?
Yeah,
right? So
but
maybe
Venice
not
all happens on this kind of island outside of the main part of downtown Venice. So if you stay in this much I do know. If you stay in the central part of Venice, you're going to be stuck on a ferry a lot of the time. I mean, I think it's still beautiful. It's Venice. Again, Telluride also still beautiful. Toronto, beautiful, beautiful time of year to have a festival in Canada in early September. So I'm not going to complain.
Yeah. I guess we'll find out if Horse and Hound will be okay in their coverage of Venice this year. But shift over to Telluride here. That lineup just dropped today. We're recording here on Thursday. So what stands out for you as to what's there and maybe what's not there? What are your thoughts here on the Telluride lineup for the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I can shamelessly plug my own podcast, which you were going to let me do later, but I'll do it now. That Sean Fennessy of The Ringer came on Prestige Junkie with me this week and kind of handicapped what we thought was going to be at Telluride. They don't announce their lineup till the festival's starting, but you can make some good guesses based on other festival lineups. And we got pretty much all of our guesses right. A lot of Cannes titles that are going to continue their buzz, like Anora or Emilia Perez or Oh, We Imagine Us Light are all going to make their way there. That's a strategy. Neon's done especially well, Anatomy of a Fall really took off at Telluride last year.
Right.
It's interesting. It'll be the world premiere of The Nickel Boys, which is one of the big titles at the New York Film Festival. And so it's interesting that Telluride kind of got to steal it away. That's Amazon MGM's really huge play for the fall. So that's one that I don't...
Colson Whitehead book, right?
The Colson Whitehead adaptation, yes, exactly. It's directed by Ramel Ross, who made this really fascinating tiny movie called Hale County this evening. Very interested to see where that one goes. And then also Netflix's The Piano Lesson is going to show up there for the first time. They've got Emilia Perez. They've got Will and Harper is also going to be at Telluride and a documentary about Martha Stewart. Will and Harper, yeah, exactly. It was at Sundance. Emilia Perez was at Cannes. But Piano Lesson is the real big question mark. It's August Wilson adaptation. It's the Washington family.
Right.
A friend of mine was on the same flight as John David Washington to Telluride today. So there's your celebrity spotting.
Scoop coming. Okay, there we go.
Exactly. I think he had a great outfit on is what I've been told. So there you go.
Love it.
So yeah, I kind of spend all of Labor Day weekend refreshing, Letterboxd or whatever else, wherever else people are going to share their movie takes to hear what everyone thinks about these things. Because the buzz starts.
That lineup, it's they always do. Maybe I just forget. Maybe it seems more robust than in my head, Katie. Maybe it is just more because it's 2024, not 2021, or even the lineups were a little bit lighter. But
or 2023 when the strikes were still ongoing.
And the strikes were going on. Right. Yeah. That's right.
The other big one I should mention for Telluride is that Saturday Night is going to be there, the Jason Reitman Saturday Night Live movie. I think we all assumed it would be a Toronto premiere. There's literally a street named after the Reitman family right in the middle of where the film festival happens. But it's going to Telluride earlier, which choosing to interpret as a sign of faith. I have high hopes for that movie, so that's an interesting Telluride one too.
Okay. And was disclaimer on this list?
Yeah. Disclaimer, I think, is at Venice.
This is not a movie.
Yeah, it's not a movie. It's a TV series.
Explain what this is for folks and why is it being it's at Venice and now it's going to be at Telluride.
And at Toronto as well.
And
it's
at Toronto.
The reason that Kate,
what is this?
Kate
lay this
Blanchett
out for me.
has been wearing incredible outfits on the Venice red carpet.
Well, of
that
course.
might be the reason that it went to film festivals, because Kate Blanchett is going to show up looking great.
Sure.
It also stars Kevin Kline. I think all the episodes are directed by Alfonso Cuarón. I'm not 100% sure on that. TV shows show up at festivals these days. Toronto tends to have a bunch of them. Expats showed one of its episodes last fall, months before it actually premiered.
This is more the Telluride thing throws. Like TIFF does mix it up a little bit, I know, but like Telluride seems to just always be a film festival, and this one's like, I know it's Alfonso Cuarón, like, all right, you're gonna make an exception, I guess, but
I think,
I don't know.
Or like its relationships, and I'm not going to be able to remember which of Cuarón's movies have played at Telluride, but often they'll have filmmakers who just love Telluride and will really like want to make sure they go through the effort of going back to that festival. And Telluride has this reputation of being a spot with like a bunch of moneyed Western people who have ranches in Utah or something like that, who are probably a strong overlap with the Apple TV Plus audience. So I feel like that might be your crowd.
Maybe Apple. All right. There's an Apple TV production. Also, Paramount's Better Man is there.
Yeah.
Which this one, it's a movie kind of about Robbie Williams, the big UK singer, boy band singer and so forth, that a huge documentary on Netflix this year.
I like that you felt like you needed to explain who Robbie Williams is.
I think I do. No, I think that's a fair thing.
I would agree.
That's a
I
fair
feel like
thing.
if you're not from Europe, Robbie Williams is a bigger question mark.
Okay, that's true. I grew up in 2 Commonwealth countries, so I was like, why are you explaining Robbie Williams to me, Sean?
My apologies to our international listeners, okay?
I have not seen Better Man, nor have I talked to anyone who has, but I have heard rumors that it is not quite what you expect
I've
as
heard
a
that too.
singer biopic. So I'm just going to read some segments from its description on the TIFF website. This is all public information.
Please.
Director Michael Gracie leverages his extensive visual effects background for this film. With its vibrant music, state-of-the-art visuals, and brilliant quote-unquote casting conceit, gather round and witness the life of Robbie Williams unfold in a rather unorthodox way, to say the least.
Yes.
Something weird's going on with this movie.
Something's going on with this. And I've heard a few things that are like a little, rumbling. So that's the movie. I saw this in the lineup. I was like, oh, this is going to have its big reveal at this point. So people will now know what this is. So
and remember, this is also the fall that's bringing us the Lego biopic of Pharrell, Piece by Piece.
Right. That trailer's out already. So that trailer's out. That looked cool. I like that trailer.
But like the creative musician biopics theme of this fall is very interesting. Well, I'm curious where it takes us. And Piece by Piece, the Pharrell movie is also going to be at Telluride.
Right. Except for Bob Dylan, A Complete Unknown, which is still not anywhere.
There's a handful of movies that aren't going to any of these festivals, and you would more or less expect it, like Wicked, Gladiator 2, Moana 2.
Well, but this is a Searchlight pick.
Well, yeah, Nosferatu being the other kind of big Christmas movie that's not going anywhere. But yeah, I mean, A Complete Unknown could go to a festival to build buzz, but it's about Bob Dylan. It's starring Timothée Chalamet, who had a huge Christmas hit last year. Like, I think they don't need it. And I think you give yourselves months more of people being like, does he get the voice right? Does he get Dylan right?
Yeah,
or you can kind of come in after all of these other titles have kind of exhausted their buzz cycle. I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, no, it's just curious more than I think. I'm not saying it should have been there, but I'm like, it is. It's like, oh, okay, they're going to go that route. And it is a Christmas movie.
I don't think they're going to show it to me.
Yeah. The teaser trailer came out. But so Richard, you and Katie are both heading to TIFF. Richard, what is on your, what's of all these films going on here? What's lighting up your eyes here as we talk about all this?
Katie is much better. We've been confirming this week, much better organized and more strategic in our planning. My festival experience is usually just sort of standing on a corner, trying to get the schedule to load on my phone and figure out if I can make it from this reception to this movie and then the other one that starts across the street, and then spending 90 minutes standing in a corner freaking out and missing all of them. So that's
Katie,
generally
can you take care of Richard in Toronto? I'm a little concerned now. I think he made it his chaperone up there. I don't know.
I feel like because Toronto it's a very large city, but the festival is very condensed. So often you'll step out of a screening and run into someone saying, "Hey, I'm going to this party." You'll be like, "Okay," and you just kind of get swept along. I feel like Richard, you just got to let someone drag you places, and then you'll
get me to the buffet on time. That's all I
want to see the Richard and Katie buddy movie in Toronto.
I mean, Richard has already invited me to a couple of fancy parties that are going to be at our first night. So we'll be shuffling our way across town, trying to not bring shame upon the Ankler name.
Nobu is opening a Toronto location this month, by the way.
Okay.
I may be interested to hear. It seemed to be a spot for where a lot of people are throwing their parties. But
we might have a sushi report for you guys when we get back.
But listeners, if who are up there, if you see us, please say hi.
Yes.
And, yes.
Come up and chat.
There's also a Nobu documentary. Did I see that right, Katie, as part of the mix here?
Indeed, yes. That may or may not be a coincidence.
How convenient, yes.
Which will be celebrating its debut at the new Nobu, Toronto.
But it's only playing part of the buyer's market, right, Richard?
Yes, it's not shown in, what do they call it there? It's an in competition, not competition.
It's part of the market, I guess, would be. Yeah,
that's the interesting kind of side part of Toronto. You get the press people who are talking about the films coming out that year, but there's a whole section of screenings that are only for industry. Like I remember when The Holdovers screened for industry in 2022, I guess, and we were like, oh man, people love this movie. You got to wait a year to see it. So that's the really, really advanced buzz you can tap into if you ask the right people.
That's how much juice the juice meter of how much, how's your, how much weight do you have, which invites you get. So, and Katie, I think on your TIFF radar, especially that you're, that maybe the top of the list or anything.
I'm really excited about Baby Girl, the movie that is, I believe, also playing at Venice. It's Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, who's been in a lot of good movies.
Antonio Banderas is in that too, right?
I think so. It's gotten. I've heard from people who have seen it that it's pretty strong. Megalopolis is going to be having a big.
That's right.
It's not having any press screening. There are only public screenings in Megalopolis in Toronto, so that ticket is hard to come by, and I have yet to confirm that I'm coming by it. So I don't know.
Now, Katie, were you falsely quoted in any of the Megalopolis
I'm not
trailers?
On the status level of Pauline Kael, so they would not bother to try to. They can fake any quote from me they want. Go for it, guys.
For the next trailer that comes out, we'll contact Katie Rich.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Say, put whatever words you want in my mouth. And then Saturday night I mentioned at Telluride. I'm very interested to see that at Toronto as well.
Yeah, that trailer looked really good. The guy playing Lorne was great, I thought.
Oh yeah,
the trailer
of Mr. Steven Spielberg of The Fabelmans.
Oh, was that?
Yeah, Gabriel Labelle. It's his kind of big first role after The Fabelmans.
That's a big role.
I'm intrigued by that. I know he's clearly not afraid of stepping into big shoes. That kid.
Yeah, not bad for your back-to-back roles and to have there. But year to date so far, obviously the strikes affected a lot of the movie. Kind of a slim pickings in the theatrical release schedule this year to a degree. But no Oppenheimer, certainly that's been on the radar so far. But anything that has some buzz to date, Katie, that we should, Dune 2 kind of, I guess maybe. I don't know what.
This is super unusual. Like you often get the back half of the year really stacked up with movies. Oppenheimer and Barbie were a real outlier, I think. But again, to quote back to my earlier episode with Sean Fennessy, he started talking about how Challengers is a movie he keeps hearing people in the industry talk about how it stuck with them. And
I was surprised about that.
Well,
I don't know.
It sticks with you one way or another. And I drew the comparison to Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I don't think is totally correct. They're very different kinds of movies. But like a spring release that you keep wanting to talk about in August, that has power. And I don't think we should underestimate that.
I mean, Elaine always does.
See, Sean was like, "Ooh, a tennis movie." No,
but the lack of,
no, in the sense that most people who saw it weren't like, "Oh my god, that was like," it was sort of like, "Oh, that was interesting." I don't know, or I don't know. Richard?
It was a divisive movie.
Sure.
The absence of any juggernauts or potential juggernauts on this calendar is pretty striking. That there's that where's the big Spielberg film or whatever or the immediate potential frontrunner.
Yeah, that's precisely how you get in Everything Everywhere All at Once or a Coda, the movie that can really come back later in the year and grab people and say, hey, you want to spend time with our cast, you want to keep thinking about our movie, keep voting for it. Again, I'm not totally sure Challenge is going to be able to do that. Luca Guadagnino has another movie playing in the festivals, Queer. So, but look, Steven Soderbergh pulled it off with Aaron Brockovich and Traffic, and those movies are probably nothing like Aaron Brockovich or Traffic, but they're
no confusing
this
those
generation's
films,
version of those movies.
Yeah, but it does feel like Katie, we have Richard, one of those years where there's really not that front runner by any means, and these next 4 weeks, Katie, will really set a lot of the tone this year versus other years where you're like, you got, certain filmmakers coming in with certain, they already had an Oppenheimer, which was already kind of like already getting that buzz beforehand. So this year, which makes it more fun, I think. Or not more fun, but it's just more like unpredictable.
I would also say don't underestimate Sing Sing, which has had a very, very slow rollout this summer from A24. But it has a real emotional pull, like what I was talking about with Everything Everywhere. And I think the more people see it, the more people will like it. And Coleman Domingo is tremendous in that movie. So I think that's in it for the long haul, too.
Yeah, the studio's had a pretty big year last year for awards. It feels like this year maybe not so much, but we still have, so Wicked you mentioned, which I don't know if that's going to be an Oscar movie, Gladiator 2, which is Ridley Scott. That trailer didn't, the first one was obviously, a big winner. We'll see, I guess. Katie,
Gladiator 2 is a huge question mark. Ridley Scott is a huge question mark. He just released a new cut of Napoleon on Apple TV as we're talking with 48 extra minutes out of nowhere.
More minutes?
Wait, didn't that movie come out like 10 months ago originally?
It came out last November. I don't know where he finds the time. I don't know how that works. I don't know if we're counting Focus as a studio, but I didn't neglect to mention Conclave, which is I'm very intrigued by from the director of All Quiet on the Western Front. But it could be a big A24, Amazon MGM, Apple's got Blitz. That could be something. The streamers could come back. I think last year was kind of an unusually good studio year by recent Oscar standards.
It felt like a throwback, I'll put it that way, in a good way. But just, it was, this year doesn't quite feel that. Again, the strikes, skewed a lot of this in terms of their release schedule.
Universal is the only studio that has won Best Picture in the past decade, I think, because they won with Oppenheimer and Green Book. And I think all the other ones have been art house divisions and stuff.
Yeah, Parasite and
Searchlight with Nomadland. Yeah, it's been really interesting.
Here is a big question mark. I think that trailer is really interesting. The Hanks, Zemeckis, Robin Wright reteam, and no one's seen that yet. That is not, I don't think, screening.
No,
right?
it's not going to any festivals. It seems like a wise move. It does seem like it could be divisive. Look, Zemeckis has made some of the best movies that have been made in my lifetime. He's made some terrible ones too. So you can decide how much you want to reserve judgment on that.
And I will note, the old Clint surprise, Katie. He has a shot, juror number 2, there that's not on any of the radars at this point.
True.
There's a history of a Clint December surprise from Warner Brothers. I'm just saying.
That's true. Although there have been a lot of Clint non-surprises that have come out in December, and everyone's been like, The Mule, okay, and then moved on.
Well, right. And which one does this fall into? Yes, exactly. Yeah. Again, 2 noted films, Zemeckis and Eastwood.
Totally. Look, Horizon Part 2 is still coming around too, so who knows?
And Horizon Part 2. And listen, I love Katie bringing it back. That's real nice. I love it. You pull every lever. That's it. Nothing goes untried here. So anyway, just a reminder, you can catch Katie on her own podcast here at The Ankler, Prestige Junkie. You just spoke with noted producer and Oscar show producer, Will Packer, right?
Yeah, he is a really smart guy about so many aspects of the business and, really frank about calling things content and wanting to meet audiences where they are and competing with TikTok and kind of doesn't have a lot of pretension about it. Next week's episode, I talked to Willa Fitzgerald, who's the star of this movie, Strange Darling. It's becoming one of those movies that everyone's like, have you heard about this thing? It's a really interesting thing. And then a real shameless plug at Toronto, we'll be doing a live edition of the Prestige Junkie podcast, and I will be joined on stage by Hugh Grant, who is in the A24 movie Heretic that's coming out this fall as well.
Oh yes, that looked
I'm really intrigued by that. So if
I love this that you're going to get to talk to the star of Paddington.
I have been told by people close to him that he loves it when people bring up Paddington too. So
he once told me in an interview that his kids watch it almost every night.
Really raising the bar for parents. If you haven't done a song and dance number in a pink prison for your kids, then you haven't lived up to your expectations.
The kids should not see the A24 movie, though, just
not.
FYI. That's way different genre. Looks great. The trailer for that is out, and that's great. So when is that?
That is going to be on Saturday, September 7th at 2 p.m. So if you're going to be in Toronto, there's going to be tickets on sale, hopefully by the time people hear this. And if you have a press or industry badge, you can just come on by. I would love to see you.
All right, fantastic. And of course, make sure you bring Richard along. Just if he's on the corner outside, just bring him in. Just whatever he needs on his phone.
His schedule is very full. He has made it unclear if he will if he'll be joining us.
Oh, well, Richard, please. It's Hugh Grant, Richard. Come on. He'd be upset if you weren't there.
Keep me posted about the hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah. The
It's order
buffet will just
dependent.
be us going to get a sandwich afterwards, unfortunately.
Anyway, Katie, you want a pop quiz? You're on the
Oh,
pod.
right.
I prepped a little bit here, so if you want to.
See, Katie has immediately already approached the pop quiz with far more enthusiasm than anybody else who has been on this pod.
I know. I play enough trivia that I have accepted that I love this kind of thing, even when I'm terrible at it.
I'm just like, I'm not in school anymore. Why am I still being tested?
You read the books before going to movies. Do not try to tell me that you don't
Different.
love
That's self-testing.
a quiz. Self-testing. All right, fair enough. All right. Well, we're just going to it's easier or not, but we'll do a little variety here. But so obviously this will be the 2025 Oscars coming up in March. So we'll go 10 years back. Who won Best Picture in 2015, Katie?
That would... Oh, hang on. The awards that happened in 2015 or for the movies that came out?
The award, yeah.
So for the films
that
of
give it out.
2014.
Right.
I believe that would be Birdman.
You are correct.
Right.
Look at that. She earns her title.
Elaine, I'm
Look at
sorry. This
that.
is what we do. This is awards nerds. Like, those Wikipedia pages are always open in a tab
Putting you
somewhere.
both to shame is what I'm saying. My usual podcast co-host here. I don't know. All right. I think we have Katie on more often. Okay. Anyway. All right. Who won Best Picture in 2005? 20 years ago. Let's go to one more.
Again, the films of 2004. Hang on. This is where I get myself.
I know that one.
That's $1 Million Baby.
Richard, what do you got?
Crash.
No, that came out in 2005.
There you go. Katie's got the numbers. Well done, Kate. 2 for 2, Katie. All right. Now we're going to go into a little lightning round. Oscar or no Oscar? Ooh. These are all actors, so we're acting also. All right.
And do you count honorary Oscars?
That is a question. Should we? That's a question.
I don't know. I don't want to mess up your math.
Should we count honorary Oscars?
I think for the purposes of a quiz, no. I think if you have an honorary Oscar, you should treasure it. But I think competitive Oscars are the things we obsess over.
All right, here we go. Will Smith, no. Who does have an Oscar? Robert Redford.
I think he famously does not have an Oscar. Oh, hang on.
Anybody?
Did he win for directing Ordinary People? I'm going to say he won for directing Ordinary People.
You are correct. Directing Oscar, not an acting
That is
Oscar.
also what I was about to say, Sean.
Oh, sorry, Elaine. I forgot to leave you. I forgot to. You have not heretofore jumped in on these answers, so I didn't think you were just protesting there on the corner there as you scowl at me from doing a pop quiz. But and he actually only has one acting nomination.
Ooh.
Robert Redford in his whole career. Anybody want to guess that one? Anybody? This is more of a Richard answer than a Katie answer because I don't even know if you were we're definitely not following the Oscar races when this was happening. So I'll give you
All President's Men.
All right.
I was going to guess Butch Cassidy.
The Sting.
Oh, yeah, that's a good guess too.
Yeah. I would have gotten All the Presidents with you, Richard, but all right. Steve Martin.
Only if he's won for some, like, definitely doesn't have an acting Oscar. I'm going to say no.
Okay. No. He does have an honorary Oscar,
good
though,
for him.
so that he does fall into that category. All right. Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what for?
The Hours. Don't we all know?
Very good.
I actually did legit know that one.
See? That's our era, Elaine. We know that. You know that.
I was alive for that. I remember that.
I remember that.
She'll get a special Oscar for her AMC ad this year.
Oh, that's true. I mean, that's
the honorary.
She gets a CinemaCon award. That's what she definitely gets. That's for sure. Yes. All right. Edward Norton.
No, he doesn't have an Oscar.
I'll say yes.
He does not. Hugh Jackman.
No. Should. Maybe. I don't know what would I give Hugh Jackman. I would give Hugh Jackman an Oscar for hosting the 2009 Oscars, which is not what
that's true. Yes. He does not. Les Mis, when he was nominated, that would have been the one that maybe would have gotten him there somewhere, but did not. Brad Pitt.
Yes. But he won in February 2020, so it's very easy to forget.
Very good. For the movie of?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
There you go. All right. Laura Linney.
No.
I'll say.
Sorry, Richard. I keep jumping on these.
All right. Final one. Samuel L. Jackson.
He has an honorary Oscar, but not a competitive Oscar. And that is going to be because in the piano lesson, he's in a really big, juicy part that he won a Tony for, I think, or at least was nominated. So that could change this year.
That's kind of a giveaway. If they have an honorary, that tells you that they don't have a
Does anyone have
one.
both?
Yeah. Certainly there are people, and I'm going to not be able to back that up with a Because I think Sidney Poitier got an honorary Oscar the year that Denzel Washington won, but he had already won. I think, yes, but often they'll give you one when they're like, oh, we're worried you're never going to win one of these. Spike Lee got an honorary Oscar a couple years before he won for BlacKkKlansman. And he was like, that's right. I'm just going to show you. I won it myself.
That's all right. He was so excited.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Here's one I don't know. Katie, this is the biggest question of all. You've proven your medal. If anybody any doubt about your awards knowledge, clearly this has been put to rest. But how many Oscar shows has Richard Rushfield been to?
Oh, more than me. I know that much.
that is not an acceptable answer.
I'm going to say 6.
I'm going to say 5.
You're going to say 5? I'm going to go 7.
So I can't give you an exact answer, but
defeats the purpose of the quiz, Richard.
So the first one, Crash, which I mentioned, was the first one that I went to. So
That's
that
a fun one to be in the room for.
19 years ago. So I'm saying I went to 2. I've probably been to 2/3 of them in the time since.
Wow.
So what
That's
is that?
2006.
So I'd say about 12.
Wow, look at
That's a lot.
There you go, 10 and 12 shows. How about that? All right, well.
Wait, how many Emmys have you been to?
Emmys I only went to twice.
Got to get those numbers up.
When after I insulted Carol Channing, it was
you were not invited back. Or Elaine Stritch. Who was it? Which one do you? Elaine Stritch, as for Carol Channing. Something Katie Rich would never do. So I will say that I can guarantee that. So yeah.
That was such an impressive run, Katie. You're our new pop quiz queen here.
You guys need to sit down on the Zoom trivia rounds I do with movie nerds every couple months, and it gets so intense, and you cannot believe the things that people know off the top of their heads.
Yeah, Elaine would just flee that. She would not last long in that. Come on, Elaine.
Give me the tennis quiz, man. Crush all of you.
I would fail at that so quickly.
Exactly. All right. Well, rounding out the box office this weekend, end of the summer, of course, so not too much going on. Dennis Quaid is yet another biopic, this time playing Ronald Reagan. Sure, why not? And Sony and Blumhouse have a evil home AI movie, Elaine, which I'm sure you'll get the review of. I'm sure it's fine.
Literally the first I've heard of either of these movies. So effective marketing campaigns
That one's called Afraid. Yeah, not a lot of multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns here. So we'll see how that, probably ending with a whimper, but certainly a summer that turned around. But I'll pull together all those numbers for the summer 2024 box office to know in the Wake Up on Sunday nights, which you get as part of your Ankler subscription. Just pop in your email address over at theankler.com to subscribe. If for some reason you listen to this podcast and have no idea who we are or what we write, but it's super easy to find out. You can also reach us here at the podcast anytime at podcasts@theankler.com and follow on the socials at The Ankler. Richard and Elaine, a pleasure as always. And Katie, a big thanks to you as well. It would be great to have you back in maybe 2 months to see how all this played out across Venice, Toronto, New York, to see what netted out here, huh?
Every movie I'm excited about will do great, and all the movies I didn't mention will fade away into obscurity. That's my foolproof prediction.
We got to have you back on for an Emmys quiz.
Oh my God. That's so much harder. The Emmys are so crazy, and there's so many of them.
You can run that one, Elaine. I'm not running that one. So, Katie, do you have a training regimen pre-festival, or are you gearing up? Give us your pro insight.
You know, what I've realized is a couple people have been very nice to share some links to films ahead of the festival with me. So I have been watching 2 or 3 movies, not a day, but I've been watching a lot more movies than usual. And so I do feel like it's just sitting for a long time. That's the practice you got to do. You got to strategize your bathroom breaks. So yeah, I'm working on it. I'm trying to get in top shape.
All right. Make sure you got those comfortable shoes handy. Got to be in your feet all day. So that's the other part of it.
Well, no, you're going to be sitting all day. You got to have comfortable pants. And then you got to run between screenings and then sit for 2 more hours.
This is why you're the professional that you are. There you go. Enjoy Toronto, Katie and Richard. We'll maybe get a little update from Richard next week. We'll see if we can persuade him to call in from above the border there, assuming they let him in the country. But we shall see. A big thanks to all of you for listening, and we'll see you next time.